Aquarium lovers know the struggle. You set up your tank, carefully arrange your plants, and introduce your fish, only to watch algae slowly take over like a villain in a slow burn movie. That's where algae eaters come in. These unsung heroes are the key to maintaining a clean, healthy, and Instagram-worthy aquarium. To help you navigate the many options out there, we've devised a tier ranking system that separates the true MVPs from the benchwarmers and the scammers. The S2F tier system ranks algae eaters based on several factors: how effective they are at consuming algae, whether they're easy to care for, and how well they fit in with your tank community. S-tier algae eaters are the rock stars of algae management. They work tirelessly, devour different types of algae, and keep peace with the other tank inhabitants. As we move down the tiers, we find algae eaters that are less efficient, harder to care for, or limited in types of algae they tackle. The F tier is essentially where algae eaters go when they've been exposed as frauds. Not only do they do a poor job of cleaning up, but some of them might even create more problems than they solve. Horned Nerite snails are like smartphones that pack a massive punch when it comes to processing power. These snails are relentless algae eaters, and they've got a reputation for cleaning algae from hard surfaces like no other. Whether it's glass, rocks, or decorations, the horned Nerite snail makes short work of tough algae spots, leaving your tank gleaming. One of the best parts about adding them to your tank is they don't breed in fresh water, so you won't suddenly finding yourself with a snail population explosion. They're perfect for community tanks, and their peaceful nature ensures they won't stir up trouble with your fish. All they need is stable water parameters and a consistent food source, other than algae of course, to thrive. When it comes to algae control, these snails are an absolute must-have. So, we're going to pop these guys into S tier, the best algae eating snail you can purchase in the hobby, and they don't reproduce. You know that one person who stays quiet in the group chat but gets everything done behind the scenes? That's the Octocinulus catfish for you. They're not flashy or dramatic, but their efficiency is undeniable. These little fish are gentle and calm, making them perfect for tanks with delicate species. They quietly graze on soft algae, especially green film algae that coats glass and plants. And they do it without disrupting the peace of your tank. However, they're not just thrown into any tank. Otos thrive in well-established tanks with stable water parameters, so they're best suited for experienced fish keepers who have a solid handle on maintaining their setup. Their small size and mild temperament make them easy to overlook. We're gonna pop these guys into S tier as well, the best algae eating fish that you can buy today. They can do too well of a job, so make sure you supplement fish food. Panda, Garra, Gobies are cool little fish that can help control algae, but they're not your go-to for a full-scale tank cleanup. They'll happily graze on algae, especially the more accessible types, but they're also omnivores and need a varied diet to thrive. These fish are active and fun to watch, constantly darting around the tank, picking at surfaces. While they do contribute to algae control, they're better suited to being part of a team rather than the sole algae eater in your tank. Their algae eating abilities are moderate, and they tend to focus on softer algae. While they can help with small algae problems, they're not effective for tackling tougher types like blackbeard algae or hair algae. You're gonna need some other more dedicated algae eaters to handle those issues. We're gonna put them in C tier. Cool looking fish, but not a reliable member of the cleanup crew. Glass shrimp, often called ghost shrimp, are the quintessential tank fillers. They're affordable, easy to care for, and let's be real, pretty fascinating to watch as they float around the tank, nearly invisible, like a Snapchat ghost icon. When it comes to algae eating, they're more of a casual observer than a real go-getter. Sure, they might pick a bit of algae here and there, but these little guys are far more interested in scavenging for leftover food or detritus than putting any serious effort in to clean up your tank. Think of them as the casual coworkers of the aquarium world. They show up to work, do the bare minimum, and head home without breaking a sweat. They help keep the tank tidy by munching on uneaten food and organic waste, but they won't go on an algae eating spree that leaves your glass crystal clear. If you're expecting them to handle an algae outbreak, prepare to be disappointed. These guys go in D tier. They're fun to watch and can assist with general tank maintenance, but they're definitely not going to be the heroes of your algae problem. If you're battling algae, look elsewhere for a stronger defense. If Amano Shrimp were people, they'd be that one friend who somehow manages to work a 9-to-5 job, run a side hustle, and still have time for a gym session. These shrimp are non-stop workers, consuming even the most stubborn algae that other creatures won't touch. They go after hair algae and blackbeard algae like it's a personal mission. Once they enter the tank, you'll notice a difference pretty quickly. Algae growth slows and your tank starts to sparkle. They're peaceful, so they won't mess with other tank inhabitants, and they thrive in planted aquariums where there's plenty of cover and space to roam. They're so easy to care for too. As long as the water parameters are stable and consistent, Their adaptability is just another reason that they reign supreme in algae control. Unlike other algae eaters that have preferences for specific algae, Amano Shrimp seem to have no such pickiness, which is a major win for tank owners looking for versatility. You already guessed it, these guys are going in S tier. They do an amazing job, so no wonder they're named after the father of aquascaping. Don't let the name fool you, the Chinese algae eater is notorious for being one of the worst choices you can make if you're hoping for reliable algae control. When they're young, they might play along, nibbling on some algae and giving you the illusion that they're useful, but as they grow older, they quickly lose interest in their algae eating duties. Instead, they become far more focused on harassing their tank mates, especially slower or weaker fish. It's like the moment they hit adolescence, they become the bullies of the tank, terrorizing everyone else while ignoring the algae that continues to spread. On top of their aggression, they get big, way too big for most aquariums. As they grow, their appetite shifts from algae to fish food, and soon enough, they're doing more harm than good. They can even cause injury to other fish by sucking on their slime coats. This leads to a stress tank environment that contributes to further algae growth. Yeah, we're putting these guys in F tier. If you're serious about algae control, do yourself a favor and steer clear of the Chinese algae eater. They're just bad news all around. Mystery snails are the equivalent of that reliable friend who might take a little longer to get things done but still shows up when it counts. These snails can help with algae control, but they're definitely not as fast or efficient as S-tier algae eaters. That said, they're incredibly useful for more than just algae. Mystery snails are scavengers, meaning that they're gonna eat uneaten fish food and decaying plant matter, helping to keep your tank's ecosystem balanced. Where they fall short is in the speed department. Mystery snails aren't the ones to call when you need an emergency algae cleanup. Their algae consumption is slower and more passive, meaning they're great for maintenance, but not ideal for a tank that's already overrun with algae. They're also larger than some of the other algae-eating snails, so you're gonna need to account for that when planning your tank's layout and population. Despite these limitations, mystery snails remain a solid choice for tanks where aesthetics and overall tank cleanliness are just as important as algae control. They go in B tier. Average algae consumption, but great for larger fish like goldfish. Now let's talk about mollies other than the black molly. Sure, mollies are well loved in the aquarium community, but when it comes to algae control, they're more like the person who says they'll help with the dishes and then just wipes down one spoon. You know who you are, don't be that guy. Some mollies are known to take the occasional nibble of algae, but honestly they're more into the snacks at the fish buffet. They far prefer munching on flakes, pellets, and plant matter, leaving the algae to grow unchecked while they chow down on tastier treats. For those who thought they'd enlist mollies to be part of the algae-eating squad, the reality is that they might take a few bites here and there if the mood strikes. But don't expect any serious algae-clearing dedication, they're just not that into it. Mollies go in D tier. They're great tank inhabitants for other reasons. You know, they're hardy, they add a pop of color, and they're easy to care for, but algae management? That's not where they shine. If you're relying on them for that, you might need to reconsider your strategy and call in the real algae eaters. Let's get to the exception. Black mollies are often seen cruising around tanks, and while they're not specialized algae eaters, they do nibble on it occasionally. If your tank has minor algae problems, you might see some improvement with a few black mollies swimming around. They're more opportunistic feeders, meaning they'll get algae when other food isn't available, but it's not their primary focus. Black mollies are known for their hardy nature and adaptability, which is honestly great for beginners who don't want to worry too much about specific tank conditions. However, their effectiveness in algae control is limited. They're more likely to eat the algae that's easy to access, like surface algae, but won't go out of their way to clean up every nook and cranny of your tank. If you're dealing with a serious algae outbreak, black mollies won't save the day. They're more of a nice to have in terms of keeping things tidy, but don't expect them to do any heavy lifting. Black mollies go in C tier. Not a reliable algae eater for freshwater tanks, however, for saltwater tanks, they're A tier if you can get them adjusted to saltwater life. However, they're too small and timid for most saltwater fish who will often bully them, but they are amazing for frag tanks. If the zebra Nerite is the reliable friend, the tiger Nerite snail is the stylish one who gets things done with flair. These snails have a striking tiger stripe shell pattern that makes them stand out in any tank, but it's not all about the appearances. Tiger Nerites are also excellent algae eaters, capable of tackling green and soft algae with ease. They work quietly but effectively, ensuring that your tank stays clean while adding a pop of color to your aquarium's aesthetic. While they don't target the more stubborn types of algae like hair or blackbeard algae, they are more than capable of keeping the everyday algae in check. With stable water conditions and regular feeding, these snails will continue working their magic for a long time. We're popping tiger Nerite snails in the A tier, another great Nerite species. Horned Nerites are better, but this one looks cooler. If cherry barbs were people, they'd be that friend who looks amazing in every Instagram post, but never helps clean up after the party. Cherry barbs are undeniably stunning, with their bright red hue and peaceful temperament, making them a popular choice for aquarists who want to add some flair to their tank. I've seen some hobbyists mention them as algae eaters, but when it comes to actually helping with algae control, cherry barbs are strictly ornamental. Their diet focuses more on small insects, plants, and leftover food than any algae cleanup. So while they may add beauty and balance to your tank, don't expect them to pitch in when algae starts covering your tank glass. They're there for aesthetic, not the labor. We're gonna go E tier here. If algae control's your priority, you need to pair cherry barbs with more algae-focused species. They're more of a tank decoration than an algae assassin, so if you want results, it's time to call in the pros. Dwarf Shrimp are the micromanagers of your tank's algae control efforts. They're great for maintaining a low level of algae, particularly in nanotanks or setups with plants that can harbor fine algae. These tiny shrimp are constantly picking at surfaces, eating soft algae, and even helping to clean up uneaten food particles. They're easy to care for, and they get along great with most tank mates, making them a solid choice for small aquariums. But their impact is limited by their size. They won't be able to handle large amounts of algae, and their preference for soft algae means they're not useful for more stubborn algae types. For small tanks or as part of a broader algae eating strategy, dwarf shrimp are helpful, but don't expect them to solve any major algae issues. These guys go in C tier, not reliable for algae. If you want good algae eating shrimp, get Amano Shrimp instead. Bristlenose Plecos are the go-to algae eaters for beginner aquarium enthusiasts. They're hardy, low maintenance, and pretty effective at managing algae in smaller or moderately sized tanks. They're especially good at cleaning algae from hard surfaces like rocks, driftwood, and tank decorations, which makes them a valuable part of a cleaning crew. But before you rush out to get one, here's the catch. Bristlenose Plecos start small, but they can grow up to 5 inches in length. While that's relatively small for Plecos, it's still something to consider if you have a small tank or delicate fish. Plus, as they grow, they can get a bit territorial, so while they're fantastic for beginners, make sure you have the space and setup to accommodate their size over time. If you do, you'll have a solid, dependable algae eater that can keep your tank looking clean without much fuss. B tier. Not as good as an Octocinulus, but one of the best when it comes to Plecos. Zebra Nerite snails are the consistent, reliable players in the algae eating game. You know that friend who always shows up on time and never complains? That's a Zebra Nerite in your aquarium. They'll keep your tank free from green algae and soft algae, working tirelessly day in and out. Their signature zebra striped shells not only add a decorative touch to your tank, but also serve as a visual reminder that they mean business when it comes to algae control. These snails are hardy, and they're relatively easy to care for, making them a solid choice for both beginners and experienced hobbyists. While they won't solve every algae problem, they are great for routine maintenance and keeping algae at bay without the need for constant intervention. Plus, their beautiful appearance makes them a favorite among aquarists who want a functional yet aesthetically pleasing addition to their tank. A tier. They do a great job, but not as good as the Nerite. They arguably look better to some. Ah yes, the large Plecos. They're the big kids of the algae eating world that everyone seems to think will fix everything until they don't. Sure, when they're young, large Plecos might trick you into thinking they're the solution to all your algae problems, casually nibbling on algae like they're doing you a favor. But as they grow, and trust me, they do grow, they start to develop other interests. And before you know it, your once algae-focused Plecos now more interested in snacking on fish food, plant matter, and whatever else happens to fall to the bottom of the tank. And they suck on the slime coats of other fish if they get hungry. Oh, and did I mention the waste? These big guys produce a lot of it, which can actually lead to more algae growth by spiking your tank's nutrient levels. Plus, their size alone becomes a problem for most home aquariums. A large lumbering Pleco might end up being more of a burden than a blessing, contributing more to the mess than cleaning it up. I'm so sorry. E tier. If you're looking for a manageable algae eater, the large Pleco is not it. What starts as a helpful tank mate could quickly turn into a source of algae problems. How's that? Hillstream Loaches are fascinating fish that are often added to aquariums for their unique appearance and algae-eating capabilities. They're best known for their ability to eat soft algae, particularly in tanks with a high flow that mimics their natural river environments. Hillstream loaches will graze on algae, but they also need other foods to stay healthy, so you'll need to supplement their diet with sinking wafers or fresh veggies. While they're fun to watch and they do contribute to algae control, their impact is moderate. They're not a catch-all solution for algae problems, but they can help reduce soft algae buildup. They're also a bit more sensitive to water conditions, so you're gonna need to keep your tank parameters stable for them to thrive. We'll put these loaches in C tier. Unique looking algae eater, but Octos and Siamese algae eaters have them beat. If Blackbeard algae had a nightmare, it would be the Siamese algae eater. This fish has built a reputation for being one of the most effective solutions for dealing with this notoriously stubborn type of algae. Unlike other algae eaters that might shy away from the tough stuff, the Siamese algae eater dives right in, making quick work of Blackbeard algae as well as other tough varieties. They're active swimmers and they love to explore, so they need a tank with plenty of space, but be warned, they're known to get a little territorial as they grow. So keep that in mind when you're planning your tank community. With the right conditions though, they're more than capable of keeping your tank looking pristine while adding an extra layer of movement and energy to your aquarium. Think of them as the closers in your algae control lineup. When the situation gets tough, they step up and handle it. A tier. Great for BBA, but they may get lazy at their job as they get older. Here's one you would expect, live plants. Live plants, when you add the right ones, can reduce nutrients and choke out algae, while others can contribute to it because they're messy. The best plants for nutrient control in my opinion are water wisteria, anacharis, water sprite, hornwort, and Amazon frogbit. We're gonna pick A tier if you pick the right plants. It can go all the way down to E if you pick the wrong ones. Choose and research wisely. Okay, so I spent a good amount of time talking about aquatic animals and where they rank on eating algae, but let's talk about the types of algae you might come across. Green spot algae is like that gum stuck to the bottom of your shoe. It clings to your tank's glass and plant leaves, and no matter how hard you try to scrape it off, it just won't budge. This type of algae thrives in low phosphate environments and can become a real nuisance if left unchecked. Fortunately, horned Nerite snails and zebra Nerite snails are the ideal candidates to tackle this problem. Their ability to stick to hard surfaces and scrape off tough algae makes them the go-to algae eaters for green spot algae. If the infestation is more widespread, Amano Shrimp can lend a helping hand, especially when dealing with smaller patches. Hair algae is the clingy friend that just won't go away. It grows rapidly, weaving itself onto plants, rocks, and decorations, turning your once pristine tank into a tangled mess. This algae is a real problem because it can smother plants and ruin the aesthetic of your aquarium. Thankfully, Amano Shrimp are up for the challenge. These shrimp go after hair algae with laser-like focus, pulling it apart and devouring it. For more extensive hair algae problems, Siamese algae eaters are also a strong option. These active fish are known for their ability to take on tougher algae like hair algae. Mystery snails might nibble at the edges of hair algae, but don't count on them to clear a serious outbreak. If you're facing a hair algae situation, bring in the heavy hitters like Amano Shrimp and Siamese algae eaters to get the job done. Alright, if green spot algae is the gum stuck to your shoe, Blackbeard algae is the full-on monster under your bed. It's tough, wiry, and spreads like wildfire, often taking over plants, rocks, and decorations in no time. Many algae eaters won't even touch Blackbeard algae, but not the Siamese algae eater. This fish lives for the challenge, and it will tirelessly munch through this tough algae, making it the ultimate weapon against Blackbeard algae. Amano Shrimp can also help with smaller outbreaks, but for a full-blown Blackbeard algae war, the Siamese algae eater is the champion that you need in your tank. If you've got Blackbeard algae in your tank, it's a sign that your tank's ecosystem needs some serious attention. With the right algae eating team and some good tank maintenance, you can beat it, but it's gonna take effort on your part as well as the right crew. I've got other algae that I talk about in my video all about them. Check it out in the card above. Remember, a key to a healthy tank isn't just about adding the right algae eaters, it's about creating a balanced ecosystem where everyone plays their part. Keep your water conditions stable, give your algae eaters the space and diet they need, and soon enough, you'll have a tank worthy of showing off on the gram. If you found this guide helpful, hit that like button and subscribe for more tips on keeping your tank in tip-top shape. Got a favorite algae eater or tank cleaning hack we didn't cover? Drop it in the comments below. And if you're ready for a deeper dive into algae eaters and aquarium care, be sure to check out the full blog post linked below for even more detailed tips and product recommendations. Thanks for watching, and until next time, happy fish keeping!